my god, have you seen Indian matchmaking?
No, I haven't. It's on my to-do list. And this
I finished it last night.
Oh, really? Actually, just this morning I had someone dropped me a message asking about it and wanted to like share thoughts. And I was like, I haven't watched it. And so their question was, do you think that that sentiment of I want to marry someone like my mom still exists? And I was like, I haven't watched it, so I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but in regards to that sentiment, I think it exists, but I don't think it should.
Yeah. I mean, there's two schools of thought on that, right? There's it does exist and it shouldn't, but then there's also it does exist, but maybe not in the way that it does. You know? Um, and I personally think that yes, it exists. For some reason, maybe because it's the culture that I'm from, but I feel like it's more prevalent in our culture. Um, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because sometimes your mothers can be great people. You can have expectations of your wife to be like really loving like your mom, or really generous like your mom, or really caring like your mom. The problem resides in the materialistic parts of your mother, or the I don't want to use the word servant, but in that
the
stream
carer
kind of thing.
The carer part of your mum.
Yeah, like always cooking or always asking you if you want tea, that kind of stuff. I don't agree with that. Or it has to dress like your mom. That's weird. I don't like that.
Yeah, so I think that the dressing is definitely something I consider in my life. So for some reason, these are the kind of thoughts I have. I'm like, so if I get married and I'm 40, does that mean I have to wear shalwar kameez? Because that's what all the married 41-year-old do. And I'm not down for that. That's not something. But it's just, I don't think I fully agree with trying to marry people like your parents, unless you're talking about your parental qualities.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, exactly. If they're good qualities, then that's a good thing to strive for. To have a partner who fulfills the qualities that you think are important, like morally or ethically, but yeah, it's weird. So on that show, the only person that there's a few girls that I really liked on that show. One of them I absolutely couldn't stand. One girl that I really liked was like super, I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's fine. She was like super independent. She ran two businesses, had this denim clothing brand. And she went to the matchmaker, and the matchmaker was like, I'm really gonna struggle because she's very independent. I was like, okay. And so this matchmaker went to a matchmaker friend of hers who does matchmaking for like more modern people. And when we first saw that modern matchmaker, I was like, oh, okay, she's good. She probably knows what she's talking about. Because, she was dressed more modern and she had shorter hair, blah, blah, blah. And just the way she carried herself and the way she talked. But then when the girl finally went and met the modern matchmaker, this modern matchmaker was trying to tell her to kind of be less independent and more willing to compromise for this potential person that she might marry, who she hadn't even met yet. And that really pissed me off. And I was like, this woman's name was Geeta. I was like, Geeta, you were my hope. I was hoping that you would encourage this independent girl, that you're a catch and we will find you someone. But this is the thing, even in like, that's India, and I think she was Hindu, but even more so in Muslim cultures, the fear of an independent person is so strong. Independent woman. And I don't know why. It's like people are afraid of independent women.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many business opportunities that are going through my head right now. I'm just thinking we could start like LKKG matchmaking service for independent and confident women. Really, really, really actually like that idea. Yeah, I mean, the commercial brain's just popping, so you need to give me a second. But my point being,
let's bring it back in.
Yeah, let's not always think about money. Everything you're saying is right. The independence of it, even like when you look online, because that's, you know, the example I can give, because I haven't watched this particular show, but even when you look online,
Yeah.
you see girls having to like dumb down their independence or their like boss attitude or their or what they're like building, because they don't want to. I think it's in our head. I don't like this word, but they don't want to come across as like too intimidating or too difficult, because that's what our elders have taught us, right? They're like you won't be able to find someone the way you are, because no one's going to want to take you in if you have a mouth or an extra degree that you shouldn't have studied for, and if you have like ambitious career plans, which makes no sense. And it's like that their fear comes from the fact that you won't be the same as they were. And I think that's where it comes from. It's like, no, but we've, you know, as ladies, we've cooked and cleaned and looked after our husbands. We've had this like really typical housewife or stay at home agenda. How can you fulfill that and work? So the priority should be you stay at home. Whereas that's where not only the women need to challenge that, but that's where the men come in. That's where the men come in and challenge and say, hey, well, no, I'm not looking for a wifey that isn't capable and isn't able. What she chooses to do is up to herself. But I'm not looking for someone that I'm going to kind of strip away her independence and her education just so she can stay at home. At least that's what I think.
I agree with that, but it also comes from a place, in addition to that, of the woman realizing her own power, because then you can't control her. Then, and that's what they say. They always say to the woman, you need to be more accommodating, whether it's to a husband or a father or a brother. You need to, because we've been brought up in a way where if we don't sacrifice everything, if we don't put everyone before ourselves, we're selfish and we're terrible. Like, I had to unlearn this, and it's very freeing. And it's fascinating how my, like, people that I know and people around me, my family, my friends, there are still people who believe in that, and they never put themselves first because it makes them a bad person in our culture.
Yeah. Actually, I was just...
Because...
Go on.
No, go on.
No, you were on a flow. Carry on.
Yeah, it's broken now.
I'm sorry. I was just having this conversation actually on the weekend, and I was talking to like my cousins and my siblings, and it was the fact that, similar to what you've just said, there are people in our immediate circle that are super like small-minded, and that's what I'm going to call them. I'm going to call them small-minded, narrow-minded, in the sense of you can have all this thinking and all of this education, all of this like great qualities, but when you get into the world of work, there's still some boys, and I say boys, I'm not saying men, there's still some boys who have the mentality of, well, we don't want her to work there because there's too many men, and we know what men are like and men look like. And especially in finance and tech, that's such a big narrative that still exists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I guess when you think about finance and tech industries and business industries, it's very male dominated, it's very male heavy, and there's a culture or presumption around it. I know even when I entered it, there was a bit like, okay, what does consultancy do? You're going to be going to a hotel. Is it going to be safe? You're going to be meeting people, the clients, what are they like, etc., etc. And I've had conversations with tons of women who have literally said, look, we can't enter these fields because our other halves, our partners, our husbands, our fathers, our brothers don't feel comfortable with us being around so much men, or so many men, sorry. And so my first question is that we shouldn't be stopping these kind of, you know, those who identify as females to we shouldn't be stopping them from entering these industries because we're scared of what people around them are going to say or going to do. If anything, we should be educating them on how to hold their own and how to be strong and independent enough and confident enough to take a stance when things aren't going their way. Just the last few weeks, actually, we've had conversations, or in my immediate friendship group, there's been conversations where my friends are like, you know, my other half when we get married or when we do this, he doesn't really want me to work so many hours, or he doesn't want me to work in this industry, or he doesn't think it's like appropriate. That's the word. It's like appropriate. Like I don't know what's
I hate
that word.
appropriate. How is working in finance and tech, for example, not appropriate when you've gone and done a master's degree or done a PhD? Why is it that we are creating these like perceptions based on some person's viewpoint, and that viewpoint isn't just always a man? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just using this example.
The word appropriate is used to control again. The shirt you're not wearing is not appropriate.
Your job
is not appropriate. It's not appropriate to do a PhD.
It's not
appropriate because it sounds better than saying you're not allowed to do that.
And therefore it makes you think you have a choice. And when you decide, you think it's because it's your own decision, but it's really not. Going back to male-dominated fields, I remember I was in O-levels, which is 8th grade? No, 9th grade. Yeah, GCSEs, 9th grade. And I remember my dad wanted me to be a doctor or a dentist because his whole family is all doctors and dentists. And I was like, no way in hell am I going to do anything related to biology. I have a phobia of needles. And I was like, nope, not doing it. Also, I just don't want to do it. And it came time to pick our subjects. And I ended up picking biology because there was no girls in computing. Because I went to the computing class, it was all boys. There was no girls in there. So then I went to biology because every single girl in my class picked biology. There was no boys in biology. No, there was one boy in biology, sorry. And I think back to it, and it was a comforting situation for me to be around those girls when I studied biology. But I wish that my parents or people who knew me and who knew that I, constantly resisted the idea of becoming a doctor, realized what I'd done and been like, why have you picked biology? That's not a good enough reason to not do something that you want to do. You shouldn't be doing something because the opposite makes you uncomfortable. You should learn and grow. And so what if there's more boys in that class? You could be better than all of them, So it starts from a very young age, actually. And I also remember when I was growing up, there was a family friend of ours who they moved to America, and she was doing really, really well. And I met her at this dinner ages after she came back. And she was like, so she was telling me, but not everyone else. She was like, yeah, I live on my own and stuff, but I don't mention it anymore because if I tell an auntie, she'll be like, you live on your own? Why not with your parents? What's wrong with living with your parents? And that was maybe 10 years ago. And the mentality is still there. I remember when I moved out, my parents were very against it. Very, very against it. But the fact is that getting to a point in your young adulthood when you can afford to live out of your parents' house, learn how to cook and clean and do the laundry and everything on your own, and this goes for both male and female, is essential to personal growth. I don't think you know yourself until you move out of your comfort zone, which could be your parents' house, your grandparents' house, wherever it is that where you've grown up. And I still find it heartbreaking that I did move out, and it was against their wishes, and they were upset with me. I think my mom didn't speak to me for months because she was like, you've moved out, and she was completely against it. And it was heartbreaking because it was a big moment for me in my life where I was like, I'm an adult, I can afford to pay rent in London, which is insane, and I am going to do this on my own. It wasn't an easy decision, and I did it, and I think I'm very proud of that decision because at that point they were convincing me that no, the concept is always you go from your dad's house to your husband's house,
And I think it comes down to, again, like I said before, like controlling you, but it also comes down to how women's sexuality is controlled, and also how their virginity is the most valuable thing about them. So as soon as a woman goes and suddenly becomes independent, oh, someone else might take that away from her and she's not valuable anymore. Or, you know, she might find someone else that she likes or whatever. Like that freedom of being able to make a choice without any influence is what's scary to our elders. And I can tell you that I didn't meet anyone else. I did end up marrying the same person that I was engaged to, so I guess it all worked out.
Same. Same. Yeah, and I think you're completely right. You said something. It's like that. The value of a woman is placed in such. If you think about it, and I don't know any other better word right now that comes to my head, but like weird places or weird things that it
literally between our legs.
That's our value, and even then we're not valued for it. Regardless if that's where we're valued, even then it's, you know, the value isn't placed on your brain or on your education, on your soul, and your morals and your value. It's placed on your attraction. It's placed on like really shallow things, like your hair, like how long your hair is, how brown it is, how clean your skin is, if your nails are long, if your nails are done, what you're wearing, and
your eyebrows are big.
If your eyebrows are done, and also like that grooming aspect of, well, you know, now you're lucky, you have to dress a certain way and act a certain day and walk a certain way. And I remember I was younger, and it was a really weird story, but I remember I went to my auntie's wedding about 15 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, in Canada. And I remember she was sitting, and she sat with like her legs just open and really casual. Just, there was nothing more to it, right? Like she just didn't cross her legs when she sat. And I remember her mum getting really angry, being like, "Go and tell her to cross her legs, because that's not how ladies sit." And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. That's not how ladies sit.
There's little penises flying around, okay? What if one gets stuck in there? Like, close your legs.
Why? They're just sitting casually. And then I saw all the boys being able to sit how they want and slouching, and she wasn't allowed to slouch. She's like, sit. And you know, there's that Princess Diaries scene where she goes,
where she puts her legs to the side,
and sits like that. So I started doing that in my head. I've done that for years because of that scene, and then also because of this like one time that my auntie's mom like told her off for not sitting properly, and I made it a point that I tried to like sit properly because I thought that's the way you do things. And it's small things like that, you know, what does slouching have to do with anything? Like if you're tired, you slouch, but you can't because it's not the ladylike thing to do. It's honestly, it's complete nonsense. Like the shallowness in what we are and what we do still exists, and it needs to stop. And it needs to stop on so many levels, because we need to educate and empower young people, regardless of their gender and race, young people, that their value lies in their morals, in their values, in their education, their brain, in what they're contributing to society, not in the color of their eyes or the length of their hair, or, you know, the way that they sit and stand. That doesn't make any sense to me anymore.
I do see where the sitting and, you know, the way you sit and the way you stand and all that grooming aspect of it. So there's a different way that I think of it. I think of it as grooming, as being able to carry yourself confidently. And I do think that it's important, but I don't think it's done the right way. It's used as policing against women. Whereas I think everyone should sit in a, you know, your posture should be good. You should sit properly. You shouldn't be slouching. That's something that's important for everyone. But you're right. The way that it's put out there is to police women, where, you know, cross your legs or sit properly, but everyone else can sit however they want. So that's wrong. But yeah, it's also because I think the generation before us grew up with the generation that was before them, and there's not that much of a difference between those two, but there's a massive difference between us and them. We're growing up in a very different world, but the values being passed on are somehow, they favor men more, so men keep those values and women don't. So, for example, our parents may teach our daughters to, sit properly and learn to cook and clean. Fine. But equally, those girls will learn to, make a business and fight against the patriarchy and go to women's marches, etc. Within that same sphere, their sons are being taught that, oh, you should have a wife at a certain age and she should be able to cook and clean, etc. And that all favors them, so they don't fight against it. So they are still they still have the expectations that the generation before them had. And at the same time, the women in their generation are fighting against that. And I'm not saying that men who, appreciate a well-rounded woman don't exist, because they do exist, but it's hard to find them. And it's particularly because those expectations are passed down to them. And while they're expecting all of that from the women around them are breaking apart from there. And a lot of people in Pakistan that I've heard of getting married or looking for someone to get married now are like, oh no, there's too many divorces nowadays. It's terrible. It's because the girls are too modern and they just want to do whatever they want. And I'm just like, that's a good thing, because the amount of marriages I've seen where women stay silent and hate their life, don't even talk to their husband, don't even see their husbands, they're miserable. So if you're telling me that a woman can get divorced 6 years after getting married because she hates her husband, or if he's an asshole, and then gets to live a fulfilling life after that, what's wrong with that? How are you telling me that that's worse? Because she's not accommodating, she's not staying silent, she's taken the power that she has. It's not about giving women power. Women have the power. It's the realization that they can use it. Hey guys, this is Zoha. Thank you so much for listening to me and my boss babe co-host Sonya. You can slide into our DMs at any time with your questions and feedback on Twitter and Instagram. We are at LKKG Podcast, or you can email us on lkkgpodcast@gmail.com.